I stand before my bedroom mirror, adjusting the pearl necklace Harold gave me for our 25th anniversary. My fingers tremble slightly. Arthritis, I tell myself, though I know it's nerves. At 68, I should be beyond this flutter of anticipation, this schoolgirl excitement that makes my cheeks flush pink despite the foundation I've carefully applied. But here I am, smoothing down my navy blue dress for the third time, wondering if the color brings out my eyes the way it used to. The doorbell rings, and my heart lurches. I check my watch. 6:30 exactly, punctual, just like I remember him being. Through the peephole, I see a man with silver hair, slightly stooped shoulders, wearing a charcoal suit that fits him well despite the years. Thomas Morrison. After 43 years, he's standing on my front porch. I take a deep breath, inhaling the lingerie sachets I keep in my dresser drawers, lavender and rose, scents that make me feel feminine and confident. My hand hovers over the doorknob. Part of me wants to flee upstairs, call my daughter Susan and tell her I've made a terrible mistake. But the larger part, the part that has been sleeping for too long, urges me forward. "Margaret," he says when I open the door, and hearing my name in his voice transports me instantly to 1980. We're 25 again, standing in the parking lot of St. Mary's Community College, arguing about Vietnam and whether love could survive the distance of his deployment. "You look," he pauses, searching for words, "you look exactly as I hoped you would." I laugh, a sound that surprises me with its genuine warmth. "You always were a charmer, Thomas Morrison." I step aside to let him in, catching a whiff of his cologne. Different from what he used to wear, more refined, expensive. "Would you like some coffee before we go? I made a fresh pot." He accepts, and we sit in my living room like polite strangers, which I suppose we are now. The coffee gives our hands something to do, our mouths something to occupy besides the 1,000 questions hanging between us. I study his face, the lines around his eyes deeper now, the jaw less defined, but those green eyes still hold that spark of mischief that made me fall for him in the first place. "I have to ask," I say, setting down my cup with deliberate care. "Why now? After all this time, why did you call?" He runs his hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it makes my chest ache. "My wife passed away 2 years ago. Cancer." His voice catches slightly. "The last thing she said to me was that I had unfinished business, that I owed someone an explanation and myself some peace." The room fills with a silence that feels heavy with possibility and grief. I think of Harold, gone 5 years now, and how he used to tease me about the one that got away. He knew about Thomas, about the summer we spent planning a future that never came to be. Harold was secure enough to joke about it, but sometimes I caught him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking, as if trying to read the chapters of my heart that existed before him. "I'm sorry about your wife," I say, and mean it. "What was her name?" "Patricia, Patty." He smiles sadly. "She was a good woman. Patient with an old fool who probably talked about you more than he should have." Heat creeps up my neck. "You talked about me?" "Not often, but when I did," he sets down his cup and looks directly at me. "I told her about the woman who taught me what it meant to love someone, to let them go." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stand abruptly, walking to the window that overlooks my garden. The roses Harold planted are in full bloom, their red petals vibrant against the green backdrop of late spring. I've tended them faithfully since his death, but I've never added new varieties, never changed anything he created. "That's not how I remember it," I say quietly. "I remember you choosing the army over me." Over us. I was 19, Maggie. The old nickname makes me close my eyes. 19 and scared and stupid. I thought I was being noble, giving you a chance to find someone who could give you the stability I couldn't promise. I turned back to face him. And did I find stability? He nods toward the framed photos on my mantelpiece. Harold and me at our wedding, our children's graduations, family vacations. You built a beautiful life. That's what I hoped for you. But it's what you assumed I wanted. You never asked me what I was willing to risk for love. The conversation feels dangerous now, like we're walking on ice that might crack beneath the weight of our words. I realize I'm angry, not the sharp, fresh anger of a recent wound, but the deep, settled anger that comes from a lifetime of wondering what if. Thomas stands and moves toward me, stopping just close enough that I can feel the warmth radiating from his body. You're right. I was a coward. I took the choice away from both of us. Yes, you did. The admission feels both liberating and terrifying. Do you know what the hardest part was? Not the goodbye. I expected that once you enlisted. It was the silence afterward. No letters, no calls. I kept waiting for you to contact me, to give me some closure. I wrote you letters, he says softly. Dozens of them. I just never sent them. My breath catches. Why? Because I convinced myself it would be cruel to hold on to you when I had nothing to offer. I was being deployed to Germany, then who knew where else? I couldn't ask you to wait for someone who might not come back. But you did come back. Not the same person who left. I search his face, seeing now what I missed in my initial nervousness, the weight he carries, the shadows that have nothing to do with age. War changes people. I learned that from my brother Jimmy, who came back from Korea quiet and haunted. What happened over there? He's quiet for so long, I think he won't answer. Then I learned that love isn't a luxury you can afford when you're not sure you'll see tomorrow. I learned that the boy who promised you forever died somewhere in a foxhole outside Munich, and the man who came home didn't deserve to resurrect a dream built on innocence. The raw pain in his voice undoes something inside me. I reach out without thinking, covering his hand with mine. His skin is warm, the bones more prominent than they used to be, but the shape of his fingers is exactly as I remember. Thomas, I whisper, you could have told me all of this back then. I would have understood. Would you? Really? He turns his palm up, capturing my fingers. Because I'm not sure I understood it myself until decades later. I just knew I felt broken, and I didn't want to break you, too. We stand there in my living room, holding hands like teenagers, the weight of 4 decades pressing down on us. Outside, my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, waves from her yard, and I wonder what she thinks seeing me with a strange man, both of us dressed like we're heading somewhere important. We should go, I say finally. Our reservation is at 7:30. He releases my hand, and I immediately miss the contact. Margaret, if this is too much, if I shouldn't have come. You should have come 43 years ago, I say, surprising us both with the sharpness in my voice. But since you didn't, tonight will have to do. The restaurant Thomas chose is elegant without being pretentious. White tablecloths, soft lighting, a piano player in the corner working through jazz standards. I recognize it as the kind of place Harold and I would have come for anniversaries, special occasions that required celebration. The hostess seats us at a corner table with a view of the downtown lights beginning to twinkle in the gathering dusk. You look nervous, Thomas observes as I study the menu for the 3rd time without absorbing a single word. I am nervous. I set the menu down and meet his eyes. I don't know how to do this anymore. Dating, I mean, if that's what this is. He smiles, and for a moment, I see the young man who used to make me laugh until my sides ached. I don't think either of us knows what this is. Maybe we can figure it out as we go. The server approaches, a young woman with kind eyes who reminds me of my granddaughter Lucy. She takes our order with professional efficiency, but I catch her glancing between us with barely concealed curiosity. We must look like what we are, 2 seniors on what might be a date, navigating the uncertain waters of late-life romance. Tell me about your children, Thomas says after we've ordered wine, a bottle of Chardonnay that I hope will settle my nerves. I saw their photos at your house. The question feels both safe and loaded. My children are my proudest accomplishment, but they're also proof of the life I built without him. Susan is 42, a pediatric nurse in Seattle. She has twin boys, my grandsons, Jake and Connor. They're 8 and obsessed with baseball. And the other one? The young man in the graduation photo, Michael. He's 39, teaches high school history in Denver. Never married, but he's been with his partner David for 12 years. They're talking about adopting. I watch Thomas' face carefully as I mention David, wondering if his generation, his background, will color his response. But he just nods thoughtfully. That's wonderful. Teaching history, that's important work. Someone has to help kids understand how we got where we are. Michael loves it. He says history isn't about memorizing dates. It's about understanding the choices people made and why they made them. I pause, letting the relevance of that statement settle between us. What about you? Children? 2 daughters. Jennifer is 45, lives in Chicago with her husband and 3 kids. Amy is 41, divorced, raising 2 boys on her own in Phoenix. She's a social worker. They must have been a comfort when your wife was sick. His expression grows somber. They were. Jennifer flew out every other weekend during the final months. Amy moved in with us for the last 6 weeks. They took care of both of us, really. I don't know how people get through something like that alone. The wine arrives, and we go through the ritual of tasting and approving, though I suspect neither of us is really focused on the vintage. The alcohol helps, not enough to dull my awareness, but enough to soften the sharp edges of my anxiety. "Can I ask you something?" I venture, rotating the stem of my wine glass between my fingers. "When you decided to call me, did you think about what you hoped would happen?" He considers this, staring into his wine as if the answer might be floating there. Honestly, I tried not to think too hard about it. If I had, I probably would have lost my nerve. "But you must have imagined something, some outcome." I imagined apologizing to you. I imagined trying to explain decisions I made when I was too young to understand their consequences. I imagined. He looks up, meeting my eyes. I imagined seeing if the woman I fell in love with was still there, somewhere underneath all the years. And what's your assessment so far? He reaches across the table, covering my hand with his. "She's not there, Margaret. She's gone." My heart drops, but before I can pull away, he continues. "The woman sitting across from me is so much more than the girl I remember. She's weathered storms I never knew about, raised children, built a marriage, survived loss. She has depth and strength that 25-year-old Margaret was still growing into." His thumb traces across my knuckles. "I think I might be falling in love with this version of you." I stare at him, speechless. In 43 years of marriage to Harold, through all our ups and downs, no one has ever said anything that made me feel so seen, so valued for who I've become rather than who I used to be. "That's terrifying," I whisper. "Why?" "Because I don't know if I'm brave enough at 68 to risk my heart again. Because my children would think I've lost my mind. Because I have a comfortable life, a routine, a garden that needs tending, and book club meetings and volunteer work at the hospital." I take a shaky breath. Because falling in love at our age feels like swimming in the ocean during a storm, exhilarating and potentially deadly. Thomas laughs, a rich sound that draws glances from other diners. "When did you become so poetic?" "I've always been poetic. You just never stuck around long enough to find out." The words come out harsher than I intended, but I don't apologize. There's something liberating about speaking the truth, even when it stings. Our dinners arrive, salmon for me, steak for him, and we eat in relative silence for a few minutes, processing the emotional weight of our conversation. The food is excellent, but I can barely taste it. My entire body feels hyper-aware, as if every nerve ending has been rewired for this moment. "Margaret," Thomas says eventually, setting down his fork, "I need to tell you something else, something I probably should have mentioned earlier." The seriousness in his tone makes my stomach clench. "What is it?" "I'm not just visiting. I moved back here 3 months ago. Bought a house on Elm Street about 2 miles from yours. I set down my own fork, staring at him. You moved back? Why didn't you mention this before? Because I didn't want you to think I was pressuring you. I didn't move back because of you. Not entirely. My daughter Jennifer thinks I need to be closer to family as I get older. And Amy worries about me rattling around alone in that big house in Phoenix. He pauses. But when I was looking at places to relocate, this town kept calling to me. The place where I was happiest before I learned to be afraid of happiness. I feel dizzy, whether from the wine or the revelation, I can't tell. So you're staying? This isn't just a visit, a nostalgic trip down memory lane. I'm staying. He leans forward, intensity burning in those green eyes. But Margaret, I want you to know, I didn't call you because it was convenient. I called you because in 69 years on this planet, I have never stopped wondering what would have happened if I'd been brave enough to choose love over fear. And now? Are you brave enough now? I don't know, but I'd like the chance to find out. With you. After dinner, Thomas walks me to my car, his hand light on my lower back, a gesture that feels both foreign and perfectly natural. The evening air carries the scent of blooming jasmine from the restaurant's landscaping, and I'm acutely aware of every sensation. The click of my heels on the pavement, the soft brush of my dress against my legs, the way the breeze lifts the hair at my temples. Would you like to come back to my place for coffee? I ask, then immediately feel foolish. Do people our age still use coffee as a euphemism? What exactly am I inviting him to do? I'd like that, he says simply, and I'm grateful he doesn't tease me about my awkwardness. The drive back to my house passes in a blur of streetlights and nervous energy. I keep glancing in my rearview mirror, watching Thomas's headlights follow me through the familiar streets of our shared hometown. How strange to think we might have passed each other in the grocery store, at the bank, walking our dogs in the park, never knowing how close we were to collision. Inside, I put on a pot of coffee and try to steady my trembling hands. Thomas wanders around my living room, studying the photographs, the books on my shelves, the small details that make up a life. He pauses in front of a picture of Harold and me at our daughter's wedding, both of us beaming with parental pride. He looks like a good man, Thomas says quietly. He was. I join him at the mantelpiece, looking at Harold's familiar face. He was patient and kind and steady. He made me laugh every single day for 38 years. You loved him. It's not a question, but I answer anyway. Deeply, completely. The way you love someone who chooses you every day, who builds a life with you brick by brick. Different from what we had. I consider this, trying to articulate something I've never had to put into words. What we had was lightning, brilliant, powerful, impossible to predict or control. What Harold and I had was sunshine, warm, reliable, something you could build your whole world around. Thomas nods slowly. I never got sunshine. After you, I spent years looking for lightning again, thinking that was what love was supposed to feel like. Did you find it with your wife? No. But I found something else. Companionship, respect, shared goals. Patty and I grew to love each other, but it wasn't the kind of love that rewrites your DNA. The coffee is ready, filling my kitchen with rich, comforting aromas. We settle at my kitchen table, the same one where I've eaten thousands of meals, helped my children with homework, paid bills, read countless books during quiet Sunday mornings. Having Thomas here feels surreal, like two different versions of my life are colliding. I keep waiting for this to feel wrong, I admit, stirring cream into my coffee. For guilt to set in, or for reality to crash down and remind me how ridiculous this is. And, does it feel wrong? No. That's what scares me. I meet his eyes across the table. It feels like coming home to a room I'd forgotten I had. He reaches for my hand, and this time I don't hesitate to take his. Our fingers intertwine with an ease that defies the decades between our last touch. "I have a confession," he says. "I've been preparing for this conversation for months. I rehearsed what I'd say, how I'd explain myself, what I'd do if you told me to leave and never come back. And what would you have done? Respected your decision, gone back to my empty house and tried to convince myself it was enough to know you were happy and healthy." I squeeze his hand. "I wouldn't have told you to leave. How can you be sure? Because I've been dreaming about you for 5 years. Ever since Harold died, you've been showing up in my dreams. Not the young man I remember, but you as you are now. Older, weathered, carrying stories I've never heard. In my dreams, we sit and talk for hours, and I always wake up feeling like I've lost something precious." His eyes widen. "Margaret, I know it sounds crazy. I told myself it was just grief playing tricks on my subconscious, or maybe guilt over being attracted to someone who wasn't my husband. But part of me wondered if, somehow, across all those miles and years, you were thinking about me too." "Every day," he whispers, "especially after Patty died. The loneliness was so complete, so absolute, that I'd lie awake at night and imagine what you were doing, whether you were happy, if you ever thought about the boy who loved you badly but completely." We sit in silence, the weight of our mutual longing settling around us like a blanket. Outside, the automatic sprinkler system kicks on, sending arcs of water across my lawn. Normal life continues while we sit in this bubble of possibility, two people who might be brave enough to rewrite the endings they thought were already written. "Thomas," I say carefully, "if we do this, if we try to see where this leads, I need you to know that I'm not the same person I was at 25. I'm set in my ways, probably more than I realize." I have health issues, nothing serious yet, but I take medications, I see doctors regularly. I can't stay up past 10 o'clock without paying for it the next day. "I have diabetes," he says matter-of-factly. "I check my blood sugar 3 times a day and give myself insulin shots. My knees creak when I get up from chairs, and I sometimes forget words in the middle of sentences. I snore, I read with reading glasses, and I take pills to sleep through the night." Despite everything, I laugh. We're quite a pair, aren't we? "The best kind," he says seriously, "the kind who know exactly what we're getting into." I stand up, suddenly needing to move, to do something with the energy coursing through my body. "Would you like to see my garden? Harold planted roses, but I've been adding herbs and vegetables. It's nothing spectacular, but it's mine." We step out onto my back deck, and I flip the switch that illuminates the landscape lighting Harold installed our second year in the house. The garden spreads before us in the soft glow. Neat rows of tomatoes and peppers, raised beds filled with basil and oregano, and everywhere the climbing roses that Harold loved so much. "It's beautiful," Thomas says, stepping down into the yard. "Patty tried to garden, but she never had much success. Said she had a black thumb." I follow him down the path, pointing out different plants, sharing stories about failed experiments and surprising successes. It feels natural to walk beside him, to brush hands accidentally as we admire the bean plants climbing their stakes. "Margaret," he says as we reach the corner where the roses are most abundant, "can I kiss you?" The question stops me cold. My heart hammers against my ribs, and I'm suddenly aware of every imperfection: the lines around my mouth, the looseness of my skin, the way my body has changed shape over the years. But then I look at his face, illuminated by the soft garden lights, and I see not judgment, but tenderness. This is a man who has lived as many years as I have, who understands that beauty changes but doesn't disappear. Yes, I whisper. He steps closer, cupping my face in his hands with infinite gentleness. His palms are warm and slightly rough, the hands of a man who has worked and lived and survived. When his lips touch mine, it's nothing like the desperate, hungry kisses of our youth. This is soft, exploratory, full of question and wonder. I taste wine on his lips, smell the faint scent of his aftershave, feel the slight tremor in his hands. When we break apart, we stay close, foreheads touching, breathing the same air. Still lightning, he murmurs against my temple. Still lightning, I agree. The next 3 weeks pass in a blur of discovery and nervousness. Thomas calls every morning at 8:30, just after I finished my coffee and before I start my day. We talk about everything and nothing, the weather, books we're reading, memories from our shared past, observations about the changes in our hometown since we were young. He takes me to dinner twice more, and we fall into an easy rhythm of conversation, though every meal ends with the same gentle kiss in my garden, the same whispered amazement that we found each other again. My daughter Susan calls on a Tuesday evening while I'm deadheading roses, catching me humming a song I haven't thought about in years. "You sound happy, Mom," she observes, "different somehow." I pause, pruning shears suspended over a spent bloom. Do I? Yes, like, I don't know how to explain it, like you're excited about something. I could lie, deflect, change the subject, but Susan has always been perceptive, and I'm tired of carrying this secret alone. I've been seeing someone. Silence stretches across the phone line. I can picture Susan in her kitchen in Seattle, probably preparing dinner for the boys while processing this unexpected revelation. "Seeing someone," she repeats carefully. "You mean dating?" "I suppose that's what you'd call it." I sit down on my garden bench, suddenly feeling the need for support. "His name is Thomas. We knew each other before I met your father." "Mom!" Susan's voice carries a mixture of concern and something else. Surprise? Disapproval? "Don't you think it's a little soon? Dad's only been gone 5 years." "Susan, I'm 68 years old. How much time should I wait before I'm allowed to feel something again?" "I didn't mean it like that. It's just, this is so sudden. We've never heard you mention anyone named Thomas." I close my eyes, remembering the girl I was before Harold, before children, before the life that Susan thinks represents the entirety of my existence. There are parts of my life from before you were born, sweetheart, parts that had nothing to do with being your mother or your father's wife. "I know that, but—" She stops herself, then starts again more gently. "Tell me about him. How did you meet him again?" So I do. I tell her about the phone call, the dinner, the slow unfolding of possibility. I don't mention the dreams, the way my body responds to his touch, the conversations that stretch long into the evening. Some things are too intimate to share, even with a daughter. "And he's moved back here permanently?" Susan asks when I finish. "Yes." "Mom, that seems like a lot. Moving back to the same town as his high school girlfriend? What if this doesn't work out? What if you realize you're just caught up in nostalgia?" Her questions echo my own fears, the ones that surface in the quiet moments when I'm alone. Then I'll deal with it. "Susan, I know this seems strange to you, but I need you to trust that I'm capable of making my own decisions about my life." "Of course you are. I'm sorry. It's just, you're my mom. I worry about you being taken advantage of or getting hurt. I'm more likely to be hurt by living the rest of my life afraid to take chances than I am by spending time with a good man who treats me kindly." We talk for another 20 minutes, and by the end of the conversation, Susan's tone has warmed. She makes me promise to be careful, to introduce her to Thomas soon, to not make any major life changes without talking to her and Michael first. After we hang up, I sit in my garden as darkness falls around me, thinking about the different versions of ourselves we show to different people. Susan knows me as her mother, stable, predictable, devoted entirely to family. She's never seen me as a woman with desires and dreams that exist independent of my role as a parent. My phone rings again, and Thomas's name appears on the screen. I answer on the second ring. "How was your evening?" he asks, and the warmth in his voice wraps around me like an embrace. "Complicated. I told Susan about you."
And?
"She's concerned, protective. She thinks I might be making a mistake."
Thomas is quiet for a moment. Are you making a mistake?
"I don't know, but I'd rather make mistakes than live in a cage of safety and routine."
That's my brave girl, he says, and the endearment makes my chest tight with longing.
"Thomas, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest.
Always.
What do you want from me, from this? Because if you're looking for someone to take care of you as you age, or if you want a companion to fill the empty spaces in your house, I need to know. There's nothing wrong with those things, but I need to understand what I'm signing up for."
He takes a long breath, and I can picture him in his new house, sitting in whatever room he's claimed as his sanctuary.
"What I want," he says slowly, "is to love you the way I should have 43 years ago. Completely, without fear, without reservation. I want to learn who you are now, not just remember who you were then." I want to share whatever time we have left, whether that's 5 years or 25, as partners, as lovers, as two people who understand how rare and precious it is to find someone who sees you completely and chooses you anyway. Tears spring to my eyes. That's what I want too. Then maybe we're not making a mistake after all. Maybe not. We talk until nearly 10 o'clock, and when we finally say goodnight, I feel more settled than I have since this whole journey began. Susan's concerns are valid, but they're her concerns, not mine. At some point, every person has to decide whether they're going to live their own life or the life others think they should live. I choose to live my own. The crisis comes on a Thursday morning in early June. I'm in my kitchen making breakfast when the phone rings, not Thomas's usual morning call, but an unfamiliar number with a Phoenix area code. "Hello, is this Margaret Henderson?" The voice belongs to a woman, middle-aged, slightly breathless. "Yes, this is Margaret." "This is Amy Morrison, Thomas Morrison's daughter. I got your number from his phone. He's in the hospital." The world tilts sideways. I grip the counter, my knees suddenly weak. What happened? Heart attack. He collapsed at home yesterday evening. His neighbor found him this morning when he didn't pick up his newspaper. He's stable now, but... Her voice breaks. The doctors say it was substantial. He's going to need surgery, possibly multiple procedures. Where is he? And already moving toward my purse, my car keys, though I'm not sure my hands are steady enough to drive. Sacred Heart Hospital, downtown. But Margaret, I need you to know, he's been asking for you. When he was conscious in the ambulance, your name was the first thing he said. The drive to the hospital passes in a haze of panic and prayer. I call Susan from my cell phone, leaving a garbled message about Thomas being sick and that I'll call her back later. At red lights, I close my eyes and try to breathe, try to prepare myself for whatever I'm about to see. The cardiac ICU smells like antiseptic and fear. Amy Morrison is waiting for me at the nursing station, a woman who looks remarkably like Thomas with his green eyes and strong jaw. She's been crying, and her clothes are wrinkled as if she slept in them. "Margaret?" She stands when she sees me, and I nod. "I'm Amy. Thank you for coming." "How is he?" The surgery went better than expected. They placed 2 stents, and his heart rhythm is stable. But he's still unconscious, and the next 24 hours are critical. She leads me to his room, warning me about the machines, the tubes, the way he looks smaller and frailer than I've ever seen him. But nothing prepares me for the sight of Thomas Morrison, the man who kissed me in my garden just 5 days ago, lying pale and still in a narrow hospital bed. I must make some sound, a gasp or a sob, because Amy's hand lands gently on my shoulder. "You can touch him," she says quietly. "The doctors encourage it. They think patients can hear us, even when they can't respond." I approach the bed cautiously, taking in the monitors, the IV lines, the oxygen cannula beneath his nose. His face is relaxed, almost peaceful, but there's a grayish pallor to his skin that terrifies me. "Thomas," I whisper, taking his hand in both of mine. His skin is cool, but I can feel his pulse, steady and determined. "I'm here. You're going to be fine." Amy settles into the chair on the other side of the bed, and we begin the vigil that I recognize from Harold's final weeks. The strange suspension of normal time, the hyper-awareness of every beep and alarm, the desperate hope that love and proximity can somehow will a person back to health. "He talked about you constantly after he moved back," Amy says during one of our quiet stretches. "I was starting to worry he was building you up into some kind of impossible ideal." And now? She studies my face, taking in the tears I can't seem to stop, the way my hands haven't left Thomas since I sat down. "Now I can see why he took the risk of calling you." Her voice is gentle, understanding. "You love him." "I do." The admission comes easily, naturally. I don't know if that makes me foolish or lucky, but I do. Both, probably. The best kinds of love usually are. We talk quietly as the hours pass, and I learn about Thomas' life after he left me. The years of military service, his struggle to adjust to civilian life, his marriage to a woman who helped him heal without ever quite reaching the deepest parts of his heart. Amy speaks with love and honesty about her father, acknowledging his flaws alongside his strengths. "He was a good dad," she says as afternoon light slants through the hospital window. "Patient, involved, present for everything that mattered. But there was always this sadness in him, like he was grieving something he'd lost. I grieved him too," I tell her. "Even after I married Harold, even after I built a beautiful life with your father's children, some losses leave permanent marks. Is that what this is? A second chance at something you both lost?" I consider her question, watching the steady rise and fall of Thomas' chest. Maybe, or maybe it's a first chance at something we were too young to understand before. Evening comes, and visiting hours end, but Amy has spoken to the nurses, and they allow me to stay. The hospital settles into its nighttime rhythm, quieter, but never truly quiet. I doze fitfully in my chair, waking every few minutes to check the monitors, to touch Thomas' hand, to whisper encouragement he may or may not hear. Around 3 in the morning, his fingers move. Just a flutter, barely perceptible, but I feel it. "Thomas," I lean forward, squeezing his hand. "Can you hear me?" His eyelids flutter, and then those green eyes are open, unfocused but aware. He tries to speak, but the breathing tube prevents it. "Don't try to talk," I tell him, pressing the call button for the nurse. "You're in the hospital. You had a heart attack, but you're going to be okay." He squeezes my hand, deliberately this time, with intention, and I see recognition in his eyes. He knows me. He knows I'm here. The next few hours are a whirlwind of medical activity. Doctors checking vitals, nurses adjusting medications, respiratory therapists working to remove the breathing tube. Through it all, Thomas's eyes find mine whenever he's conscious, holding on to me like an anchor in the storm of medical intervention. By Friday afternoon, he's breathing on his own and able to speak, though his voice is hoarse and fragmented. Amy has gone back to the hotel to shower and change clothes, leaving us alone for the first time since this nightmare began. "Maggie," he whispers, and the sound of my old nickname in his scratchy voice makes me cry all over again. "I'm here," I tell him, smoothing the hair back from his forehead. "I'm not going anywhere." Scared, he admits, his eyes vulnerable in a way I've never seen. Not of dying, but of losing this, losing you again before we even had a chance to begin. You're not losing me. I lean down, pressing my lips gently to his forehead. But Thomas, we need to talk about what this means. What happens now? He nods weakly. I know. Everything's changed. Not everything. The way I feel about you, that hasn't changed. If anything, sitting in this room for the last day and night, I realized how much I want whatever time we can have together. Even if it's complicated, even if I need medications and doctor visits and can't promise you healthy years, especially then. I take his hand, careful of the IV line. Harold and I had 38 years together, but the last 5 were dominated by his illness. Cancer doesn't care about your plans or your timeline. What I learned from watching him die is that love isn't about the guarantee of tomorrow. It's about choosing each other today and then making that choice again the next day and the next. Thomas closes his eyes, and for a moment I think he's fallen asleep, but then he speaks, his voice stronger than before. When I was lying there before the paramedics came, all I could think about was how stupid I'd been to wait so long. 43 years of wondering what if, when I could have been loving you this whole time. We weren't ready 43 years ago. Maybe we needed all those years, all those experiences, to become the people who could love each other properly now. You think we can love each other properly? I think we can try. Thomas spends 6 more days in the hospital, and I'm there for all of them. Amy flies back to Phoenix on Sunday, but not before pulling me aside for a conversation that feels like both a blessing and a warning. He's going to need help when he gets home, she says, as we share coffee in the hospital cafeteria. Meal preparation, medication management, transportation to follow-up appointments. His insurance will cover some home health services, but not everything. I understand. I'm not trying to scare you away, Margaret, but I need to know that you understand what you're signing up for. My dad is 69 years old, and he just had a major cardiac event. This isn't going to be the romance you might have imagined. I set down my coffee cup and look directly at her. Amy, I nursed my husband through 5 years of cancer. I know what caregiving looks like. I know about medical bills and insurance fights and sleepless nights spent wondering if the person you love will be there when you wake up. I'm not entering this blindly. Her expression softens. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to imply. You're being protective. I understand that. But I need you to understand something too. I pause, choosing my words carefully. I'm not some lonely widow looking for anyone to fill the empty space in my life. I'm a woman who has discovered that it's possible to love more than one person deeply, in different ways, at different times. Your father isn't a replacement for Harold, and Harold wasn't a replacement for the young man I loved 43 years ago. They're both part of my story, and I'm grateful for all of it. Amy nods slowly. He's lucky to have found you again. We're both lucky. When Thomas is finally discharged on Wednesday, I drive him to his house on Elm Street, a modest ranch-style home with a neat lawn and flower beds that need attention. He moves slowly, still weak from the surgery and medication, but his spirits are good. Home sweet home, he says as I help him from the car. Though I have to admit, it doesn't feel much like home yet. That takes time, I tell him, supporting his elbow as we walk to the front door. Harold and I lived in our house for 35 years, and I'm still discovering corners I'd forgotten about. Inside, Thomas's house is clean but impersonal, the home of a man who moved his belongings but hasn't yet moved his heart. The furniture is nice but generic, the walls mostly bare except for a few framed photos of his daughters and grandchildren. It needs a woman's touch, he says, settling carefully onto the sofa. It needs your touch, I correct him. It needs to reflect who you are, what you love, what makes you feel at peace. Over the next few hours, I help him organize his medications, stock his refrigerator with easy-to-prepare meals, and set up a system for tracking his doctor appointments. It's practical, unglamorous work, but there's something deeply intimate about learning the rhythms of another person's daily needs. "Margaret," he says as I'm programming the pharmacy's number into his phone, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest." I set down the phone and give him my full attention. "What is it? Are you doing this out of love or out of obligation? Because if it's obligation, if you feel responsible for me because I had a heart attack right after we found each other again, I need you to walk away now before we both get in too deep." The question stings, but I understand why he needs to ask it. Thomas Morrison, if I were here out of obligation, do you think I would have spent 6 nights sleeping in a hospital chair? Do you think I would be reorganizing your kitchen cabinets and learning the names of your cardiologist nurses? Then why? Why are you willing to take on all of this? I sit down beside him on the sofa, careful not to jostle him. Because when I saw you lying in that hospital bed, I realized something. I realized that I'd rather have 6 months of taking care of you, of loving you through whatever comes next, than spend the rest of my life wondering what we might have had together. He reaches for my hand, and I notice that his grip is stronger than it was yesterday. Even if those 6 months involve pill organizers and cardiac rehabilitation appointments, even then, I lean against his shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of his skin beneath the medicinal smell that still clings to his clothes. "Thomas, I'm not expecting this to be easy. Love at our age comes with complications that 25-year-olds never have to consider. But I'm not 25 anymore. I'm a grown woman who has survived loss and disappointment and the slow erosion of dreams I once thought were essential. I know the difference between love and infatuation, between commitment and convenience. And this is love? This is love." We sit together in his quiet living room as afternoon light streams through windows that need new curtains. Outside, his neighbors go about their daily routines, mowing lawns, walking dogs, retrieving mail from boxes at the end of driveways. Normal life continuing while we negotiate the terms of our unexpected second chance. "I have something to confess," Thomas says eventually. "Something I probably should have told you before, but I was afraid it would scare you away." My stomach tightens. "What is it?" "I wrote you a letter, the night before my heart attack. I was going to give it to you on Friday when I called." He gestures toward a desk in the corner of the room. "It's in the top drawer, if you want to read it." I retrieve the letter, a single sheet of paper covered in Thomas's careful handwriting. The envelope is addressed simply to Maggie. "Should I read it now or wait until later?" "Now," he says. "I want to see your face when you read it." I unfold the caper, noting the slight tremor in his handwriting that speaks to his nervousness when he wrote it. "My dearest Maggie, I've started this letter a dozen times, and each attempt feels inadequate to express what I want to say to you. But I'm running out of time and courage, so I'll try to be as honest as I know how to be. These past few weeks have been the happiest I've experienced in 43 years. Not just because I found you again, but because I found myself again. The part of me that I thought died in a foxhole in Germany. The part that believed in possibility and wonder and the transformative power of loving someone completely. You asked me once what I want from you, from this second chance we've been given. Here's my answer. I want to marry you. I want to wake up next to you every morning for whatever time we have left. I want to learn your routines and your preferences, your fears and your dreams. I want to hold your hand through doctor appointments and family gatherings and quiet Sunday mornings. I want to grow old with you, really old, not just the version of old we are now. I know this might seem rushed or presumptuous. We've known each other again for less than a month. But Maggie, we wasted 43 years being careful, being practical, being afraid. I don't want to waste whatever time we have left. If you're not ready for this conversation, I understand. But if there's any part of you that shares these feelings, say yes. Say yes to the possibility that it's not too late for us. Say yes to the idea that some love stories are worth waiting decades to finish properly. All my love, forever and always, Thomas. I read the letter twice, my hands shaking by the time I reached the end. When I look up, Thomas is watching me with an expression of naked vulnerability that takes my breath away. "Well?" he asks quietly. "Thomas Morrison," I say, setting the letter carefully on the coffee table, "are you proposing to me?" "I'm asking if you'd be willing to consider it someday, when I'm healthier, when we've had more time to figure out how this works." I stand up and walk to the window, looking out at his front yard that needs attention, at the neighborhood where we might build a life together. Behind me, I hear the soft sounds of Thomas shifting on the sofa, probably worried that my silence means rejection. "My children are going to think I've lost my mind," I say without turning around. "Probably." "Susan will want to stage an intervention. Michael will fly home from Denver to talk sense into me." I'd expect nothing less. "My friends at book club will gossip about it for months. The ladies at the hospital auxiliary will whisper about the widow who moved too fast." Are you trying to talk yourself out of this or into it? I turn to face him, this man who has upended my carefully ordered life, who has reminded me that the heart doesn't follow timelines or social conventions. "Thomas, I can't marry you." His face falls, but he nods, as if he expected this answer. "I understand." "I can't marry you," I continue, "because you haven't actually asked me properly. You've told me what you want, but you haven't asked me what I want." Hope flickers in his eyes. "What do you want, Margaret Henderson?" "I want what you want." "I want to wake up next to you and learn your stories and hold your hand through whatever comes next. I want to scandalize my children and shock the church ladies and prove that love doesn't have an expiration date." I cross the room and kneel beside the sofa, taking his hands in mine. "So ask me, Thomas Morrison. Ask me properly." He struggles to sit up straighter, wincing slightly at the pull on his surgical incisions. "Margaret Elizabeth Henderson, will you marry me? Will you take a chance on an old fool who loves you more than he ever thought possible? Will you be my wife, my partner, my companion for whatever adventures we have left?" "Yes," I say, laughing through tears I didn't realize were falling. "Yes, I'll marry you. Yes to all of it." He cups my face in his hands and kisses me with all the tenderness and passion that 69 years of living can bring to a moment. It tastes like medicine and hope, like second chances and stubborn love, like the kind of story that people will tell their grandchildren someday. When we break apart, we're both crying and laughing, holding each other with the careful intensity of people who understand exactly how precious and fragile this moment is. "So," Thomas says eventually, his forehead resting against mine, "how long should we wait? For the wedding, I mean." I consider this, thinking of all the practical concerns, his health, my children's reactions, the logistics of combining two lives that have been separate for so long. "How about 6 months, I suggest, long enough to prove to everyone that we're serious, but not so long that we're being unnecessarily careful." 6 months, he agrees. I can live with that. "Good," I say, settling beside him on the sofa, his arm around my shoulders like it belongs there. Because Thomas Morrison, we have a lot of planning to do, and knowing us, it's going to be anything but simple. Outside, the sun is setting over our quiet neighborhood, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Inside, Two people who thought their love story was over are discovering that some endings are actually beginnings in disguise. I rest my head against Thomas' chest, listening to the steady beat of his healing heart, and think about all the tomorrows we almost didn't have. Then I close my eyes and simply exist in this moment. Imperfect, complicated, absolutely real, and know with complete certainty that every year of waiting, every moment of loneliness, every choice that led us away from each other and back again was worth it to arrive at this place. Some love stories take a lifetime to write properly. Ours is finally ready for its next chapter.